Now to talk about this video is the man who broke the story, Tucker Carlson from the Daily Caller. Tucker, welcome on board. It's pretty explosive stuff, and we've got more that we're going to get to here. Let's backtrack here. This video was released, or at least, 9 minutes of it was, and a prepared text was released, but not the ad-libbed remarks by the president, which are the most controversial. It never got reported on, correct?
That's exactly right. This was covered at the time. There were reporters in the room. I had a show at the time on another channel, and I covered the remarks that were released. But it turned out that most of the print reporters, maybe all of them writing on this story, were writing from the prepared remarks given to them by the Obama campaign. And so you saw people like Andrew Sullivan, the blogger, claim in his story that he was releasing a transcript of Obama's speech, but it wasn't a transcript. These were, again, prepared remarks approved and released by the Obama campaign. And again in this speech, you can sit and read the remarks against the actual speech, and you'll see that Obama goes off script repeatedly and ad-libs and says things that we can't find him saying to any other audience during the course of this campaign.
Do you know?
Remarkable thing.
Yeah, but there's a couple of things. As you watch the speech, one thing just stands out at you. And this is a common phenomenon. Al Gore, Republicans have the wrong agenda for African Americans. They don't even want to count you in the census. He said before a predominantly African American audience. Hillary Clinton did the same thing. Do you notice a change in the way he delivers the speech before a predominantly African American audience?
Well, the accent, let me just be totally clear, and anyone who just watched it and who's seen Obama speak in public over the last 10 years will note this accent is absurd. This is not the way Obama talks. At least it's not the way he's talked in the dozens, the scores of speeches I've watched him give or public appearances I've seen him make. This is a put-on. This is phony. That's the issue. The issue is he is telling a predominantly black audience something very clear. The federal government doesn't like you because you are black. That's a demagogic thing to say. That's a divisive thing. That's what he's saying. They don't like you because they are black. That is the theme of the speech from front to back, from beginning to end. They don't like you because of your skin color. And that is a shockingly, that's a nasty thing to say. It's a divisive thing to say. It's a demagogic thing to say. And in the case of Katrina, it's an untrue thing to say. At the moment he uttered those words, you're getting shortchanged in Katrina reconstruction funds, the administration, the government had pledged $110 billion to the Gulf. 2 weeks before this speech, the Bush administration gave the Gulf, the Katrina-affected areas, $7 billion with no strings attached. He was a sitting senator. He knew that, and he said this anyway to that audience. And I think that's a shocking thing.
So he's saying there that they don't care as much about you, Katrina, but they cared about people after 9/11. They took care of people after Hurricane Andrew. Then he says, we don't need to build more highways out in the suburbs. We should be investing in minority-owned businesses in our neighborhoods. I thought this wasn't red America, blue America, but the United States of America. So is he using the word suburbs to suggest white communities?
Okay, this is not a dog whistle. This is a dog siren. These are appeals to racial solidarity. And a few minutes before that, he said, our people, our young people, should have gotten the construction jobs to rebuild after Katrina, but instead they went to Halliburton. Right? So look, he's making a very clear case, again, on the basis of his racial solidarity with this audience, that they are getting shafted by a racist federal government. All right, and by the way, unless you can provide evidence that that's true, unless you can nail down factually that that's true, you should not say things like that, because it's dangerous to say things like that.
Well, it's incendiary, and then it raises in my mind, all right, who is the real Barack Obama? He said that I had no idea whatsoever that Jeremiah Wright, I sat in the pews for 20 years, he is like family to me, and even his praise in this speech. Now, the timing of this is interesting, because I had interviewed on Hannity and Combs, I interviewed Reverend Wright. We got into a big battle about black liberation theology. That was in March of 2007. Wright had been disinvited to give the invocation at his announcement he's running for president just a couple of months earlier. Right. So Wright is there. This is June now of 2007. So Wright is already a controversial figure here. Now it's interesting as this whole thing goes on. Then he has to give this big speech in Philly on race. So I decided we'd put the two speeches together, and we'll take a look at one, we'll take a look at the other. In other words, this is what the media didn't report on. This is what the media didn't say. Very controversial things by Barack Obama that was never reported on versus the big speech, which I believe was done out of political expediency. We'll let our audience decide. Let's show them side by side.
I've got to give a special shout out to my pastor, the guy who puts up with me, counsels me, listens to my wife complain about me. He's a friend and a great leader to everybody. Give an extraordinary welcome to my pastor, Dr. Jeremiah Wright, Jr.
I have already condemned in unequivocal terms the statements of Reverend Wright that have caused such controversy and in some cases pain. For some, nagging questions remain. Did I know him to be an occasionally fierce critic of American domestic and foreign policy? Of course.
When Hurricane Andrew struck in Florida, people said, look at this devastation. We don't expect you to come up with your... What's happening down in New Orleans? Where's your dollar? Where's your Stafford Act money? Makes no sense. Tells me the bullet hasn't been taken out. Tells me that somehow the people down in New Orleans, they don't care about as much.
Reverend Wright's comments were not only wrong, but divisive. Divisive at a time when we need unity. Racially charged at a time when we need to come together to solve a set of monumental problems. Problems that are neither black or white or Latino or Asian, but rather problems that confront us all.
Who's the real Barack Obama, Tucker? Two very different people.
They're speaking different language, different cadences, different accents, different gestures. I mean, the falseness here is overwhelming. And I would say that whether he was putting on a Southern accent or an Asian accent, it doesn't matter. He is playing a role in one of these cases. It's not clear which one. I assume in the Hampton speech he's putting on a persona he doesn't normally occupy to pander to the crowd, but who knows? Either way, you are seeing a remarkable exhibit of falseness on display. There's no other explanation for this. And by the way, I would say this about any politician.
Well, look, I go back to Al Gore. I've been saying about him, he went before a predominantly African-American audience. He went into Al Gore preacher mode, and Republicans have the wrong agenda for African Americans. They don't even want to count you in the census. I mean, it takes your breath away. Hillary did the same thing herself. But we've got the accent, we've got anger, we got rape. They don't care as much about you. Also, we don't need to build highways out in the suburbs,
but not to our neighborhoods.
So, what do you conclude?
Look, I conclude that